The most dangerous violence isn't the one that shocks us, it's the one that's been given a halo. For over 2 centuries, the left has answered the question about who we are and what do we stand for with not open debate, but open hostility and, yes, even violence against their political rivals. Today, we're looking into the halo and the shine that has been really the glazing of left-wing violence. Let's get into it.
Where just because there are some social norms that are oppressive, therefore all social norms must be destroyed. And that leads anarchism to some atrocity-inducing madness.
My name is Casey, I'm the Rumble Right Dad, and I started this channel as a therapist of 13 years to begin to try my best to enter into a future of faith, fatherhood, and freedom for my 4 children. I've been married for 10 years, 11 years. I've been a father for 10 years and a therapist for 13, and it's time that we try to bring conservative normality back into the Overton window of common sense. And today we have to look into what the left has done since the French Revolution to try to answer their political opponents with assassinations and other violence. From the French Revolution to academic theory to the streets of modern America, violence has been lionized, romanticized, baptized, and treated as necessary. And it isn't new. It's not accidental. Its origins are way back with Robespierre and his political allies, and it is still carrying into the communism and the ways that left-wing violence is being propped up in our culture as being something romantic, something that even takes the form of Tyler Robinson, who took the life of Charlie Kirk, suddenly being given this glaze as being a figure that's worthy of this romantic relationship. And really, he was protecting his significant other, and that was the reason why he offed a man who had a following and made a martyr out of a man who had a following of millions and millions of young men. That's a farce, and it is a left-wing farce that's been pressed forward, not just today and not just over the last 3 weeks, but over the last 200 years plus.
A way that I think many of us didn't expect, a very intimate portrait.
It was very touching in a way some of us didn't expect. What are we talking about here?
Jean-Jacques Rousseau, back in the French Revolutionary days, believed that legitimate political authority comes from the general will, a kind of collective force that transcends that of the individual. So ironically, with all the individualism nowadays coming from that side, it started off as collectivism, and they still, in the communist purview, bring that collectivism to the fore. He said, "Whoever refuses to obey the general will shall be compelled to do so, or by the whole body." So Rousseau in the Social Contract says, if you don't conform to our will, you will be forced to do it by us. So what he's saying is those who stand against the collective and what they believe is moral end up being on the opposition, and they're enemies of virtue, not just enemies of an ideology. So when the French Revolution broke loose, so did the guillotine, because that sort of mentality moved from Rousseau into Robespierre, the guy who just started lopping people's heads off. Robespierre said this: he saw terror not as a tragedy, but as a tool of moral purification. And he was quoted as saying, "Terror is nothing other than justice, prompt, severe, and inflexible." Does this not sound like some of the moral high ground that is being attempted to be brought to us, that all inequality is an injustice that deserves whatever means necessary to try to bring it down? That is the Communist Manifesto made real in our modern society.
He is correct. The Marquis de Sade was a writer, a libertine, which is to say kind of a free love guy of his time, and truly diabolically grotesque. Among his writings was this, 120 Days of Sodom, in which he describes barbaric and heinous sexual acts, including the of young boys. So why am I bringing this up? Because the Marquis de Sade #1 has gotten the Hollywood film treatment, not even recently. So He's apparently fair game to be dramatized, and has been, by the likes of Oscar-winning actors. But even more creepily and bizarre, the French government, this is from 2013, has been trying to get their hands on the original of this book for over a decade.
Around the same time, the Marquis de Sade was writing about freedom as the removal of all moral constraints, and that included the moral constraints that made age of consent laws surrounding child endangerment, let's say. Among other horrible moral acts, he wrote a book in French called 120 Days of Sodomy, and that was something that the French government recently purchased, the original manuscript, for $4 million as a historical artifact that they believe is something worth venerating, or at least they want to make noteworthy in the history of the French Revolution. The Marquis de Sade gave way to Gracchus Babeuf, which I'm not French, so my apologies for the pronunciation, and his conspiracy of equals. For him, if equality required conspiratorial violence, so be it. Does this sound familiar? Of course it does. It's exactly what's happening in America today. This is the left, where they start treating violence not just as useful, but as symbolic. It's romanticized as cleansing, creative, and even sacred. 20th century left theorists resurrected this theme under new language called divine violence, necessary rupture, or revolutionary authenticity. They didn't reject the terror, they reframed it as tragic but noble step towards justice. And as we've seen in the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination, they don't even really treat it as tragic, they just celebrate. Not all of them, of course, but there are exceptions that sort of reinforce the rule in this case, that even if it's a small percentage of the left that celebrated him passing away that way, that in the manner that he did, it is still a large enough proportion to be the communist movement among the left. The fist of communism and violence in order to get their political means met became holy and venerated and sacralized, and it's no longer questioned. It is worshipped. Enter people like Tyler Robinson, Luigi Mangione, among a great many others.
Dr. Timothy Leary, a psychologist who had been fired from Harvard University, was undoubtedly the most internationally conspicuous prophet of the psychedelic revolution.
Drop out. Tune in with natural things. Take off your shoes. Get back in tune with God's harmony. Surround yourself with beauty and sacred objects. You can't get caught in the conforming, rote lockstep, which we call American society.
There's a recent article in the left-wing publication of The Atlantic, of all places, that says there is a growing acceptance of left-wing political violence in America. I would hazard a guess that it's not acceptance, but at least on one side it is uplifted, just as they say. The author notes that it is an undeniable trend. Plots and attacks are rising and are increasingly justified as morally necessary among one side. This comes from, or is reinforced by CSIS, where they say that this isn't about isolated extremists anymore. It's a culture that tells its activists, if the system is evil, your violence isn't wrong, it's righteous.
Don't see where the real fight is taking place. There's no debate about who causes political violence in this country. It's the left. That's what causes it. This fantasy that they have, a fantastical America, and not living up to a fantastical America that doesn't live up to fantastical ideas that have never been lived up to by anyone, anywhere. And so therefore, wherever there's injustice, it's injustice everywhere, and there can't be any peace until there's justice, so there'll never be any peace. That is the fantasy that the left is living in.
When Luigi Mangione was arrested, he was mythologized. There were memes. He was made a sex symbol. There were chants, arts, and even when there was a recent part of his court case where he was said that he wouldn't get the death penalty, and there were people outside chanting and celebrating that. It became a slogan, "Free Luigi," not because people knew the facts, but because they loved the symbol. Left-wing violence has been haloed, and it's become a symbol of a righteous act among a certain amount of our populace. And really, it always has been all the way back to the French Revolution. The left has always been quick to canonize its violent actors, from Buboff to bomb throwers, from theory to Twitter. Then came Tyler Robinson, of course, the suspected, alleged assassin of the conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Before any trial, narratives framed about this as a political act and something that was self-righteous. And even people on CNN and other places talked about how romantic it was, that he was protecting his mate by attempting this violence against Charlie Kirk. This is Rousseau's logic in the age of social media. The enemy is absolute, the violence is moral, and the perpetrator is transformed into a folk hero. This is the left's transcendence and historical romance with the guillotine. Number one, a transcendent moral claim is made. All equality is necessary, even if it's with violence. Number two, an enemy is established who must be eliminated in order for their equality to be met. Number three, violence is sacralized. Think about the guillotine and how that was the symbol of their political movement at that time. And then four, the perpetrators of that are mythologized. So Rousseau, Robespierre, all the way up until the modern Karl Marx himself, they all become lionized, they all become venerated. And once that cycle starts, it doesn't end with speech, it ends with blood. And the socialist experiment has always ended that way. The most dangerous violence isn't the one that shocks us, it's the one that's been given a halo.